Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel, and in the video today we're answering a viewer question. M. Seeger asks, why do Americans write dates month, day, year, and most others write day, month, year? Just before we get started, I do want to say that this video is brought to you by TunnelBear. TunnelBear is a simple privacy app that makes it easy to enjoy a more open internet experience. TunnelBear prevents ISPs, advertisers, Facebook, etc. from following your browsing patterns, and it does it all while keeping your internet super fast by connecting to one of their servers in 20 different countries around the world. It's available for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac, and you can start your free 7-day trial by going to tunnelbear.com/brainfood. So in the United States, the date format begins with the month and ends with the year. Month, day, year. And this arrangement, it's relatively unique. In most of the rest of the world, the day is written first and the year is written last. This format is day, month, year. However, in some countries like China, Korea, and Iran, this order is flipped to the year, month, day. Regardless, no one seems to know why Americans first started putting the month first. It has been hypothesized that it is simply because at certain times it's more convenient to first know the month than the day for context, and as the year is less significant to know in some contexts, it has ended up being last or even potentially omitted. Thus, before people were too overly concerned with the likes of spelling, grammar, and conventions such as this, they just wrote it as was most convenient in whatever context. This idea, however, has little in the way of direct documented evidence backing it up. The best such support for this theory is that some of the first instances of the month, day, year format showed up in the same document written by the same author with the more common day, month, year format. In fact, in at least one document we found, both formats even occurred in the same sentence. That said, beyond pure speculation, how this practice definitively started is anybody's guess at this point, but what is clear is that United States citizens have been doing it as long as there has been a United States. To wit, one of the earliest examples we found is on the Declaration of Independence, with its large July 4, 1776 inscribed at the top, a format that was copied by John Dunlap, the printer who made the 200 broadsides that were later distributed in the colonies. As an interesting side fact, the Declaration of Independence was not signed in July as is commonly stated, but rather in August of that year. Apparently, the founders were fond of this format, as it is seen on at least some of the Federalist Papers, as well as the Constitution, signed by 38 of the delegates to the Constitutional Convention on September 17, 1787. However, month first was not exclusively used, and the day first format is also seen in documents from the 1800s. In an 1824 speech to Maryland's House of Delegates, John McMahon listed the date as the 28th of January, 1824, and even later, in a narrative from 1847 we dug up at the Library of Congress, the author uses both formats in the same sentence, from January 1, 1769 to 1 January 1770. During the Civil War, although President Lincoln wrote the date formally in his handwritten draft of the Emancipation Proclamation, in the first printed version, it was written at the top January 1, 1865. Note that the date was a typo, as the proclamation was to become effective on the 1st of January 1863. In the Articles of Agreement relating to the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia, the document that officially ended the Civil War, April 10, 1865 is written at the top, but then in General Lee's order dismissing his troops, he wrote 10th April 1865. By the last quarter of the 19th century, Mark Twain was writing the date month first in his correspondence with friends, and by the early part of the 20th century, American newspapers reporting on the sinking of the Titanic had the month first format as well. Of course, for the most famous speech of his career, President Franklin D. Roosevelt put the month first when he intoned, "Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy." By the latter half of the 20th century, month first appears to have become standard for much of the country, as memorialized by the famous CBS News anchor Walter Cronkite, who signed off every broadcast with, "and that's the way it is," and then day of the week, and the date month first. Although Americans find it normal, the month-first arrangement to the rest of the world makes little sense, being what one commentator has called Middle Endian. In this case, Endian refers to the organization of binary data storage, whereby the most significant byte, 8-bit unit of data, is typically stored first, in the smallest address, or last, in the largest address. If stored first, it is referred to as Big Endian, and last is called Little Endian. When it comes to numbers, the first listed digit, reading left to right, is usually the most significant and will have the greatest value. For example, if you had a numeric number 1234, the 1 represents 1000, by far the largest value in the number. This is the same with dates, where the year, which represents 12 months or 365 days, has the greatest value, so to speak, and the day the lowest. Though, again, some might argue for practical purposes, any of the day, month, or year might have greater figurative value depending on the context that it's being stated in. Thus, if applying this Endian schema to dates in the big Endian format, it would be written as year, month, day, while in the little Endian format it would be day, month, year. By putting the month first, this orderly system is screwed up by putting the middle value on an end, middle Endian. This then seems to go ahead and annoy a large portion of the planet in the process, seemingly mostly just for, well, no good reason at all. On that note, if you're wondering here, computer programmers didn't invent the term Endian. They borrowed it from Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels from 1726. In Chapter 4, Gulliver learns that a source of discord among the Lilliputians was a royal decree regarding the proper way to break into a soft-boiled egg. The emperor published an edict commanding all his subjects, upon great penalties, to break the smaller end of their eggs. Some of the populace resented this, and a bloody war ensued between the big Endians, who wanted to be free to break their eggs as they chose, and the little Endians, who followed the emperor. In staging this silly egg war, Swift satirized holy wars, such as those that raged between Protestants and Catholics during the 16th and 17th centuries, and more particularly their root causes. At least one commentator has opined that egg breaking may be a nod to the relatively slight variations between Protestant and Catholic communion rites during that period. In any event, Swift was clearly noting the absurdity of arguing over such trivial matters. Notably, however, when it comes to computer memory order, some argue vehemently that to avoid potential issues with cross-compatibility, the community should get together and choose once and for all whether to go big Endian or little, but not both. However, the reality is that both big Endian and little Endian are common in different devices, and there are even some cases of middle Endian or even bi-Endian that can operate in either mode. If the idea of sticking with only one format were to be proposed for date formats, clearly whether the big Endian or little Endian format was ultimately chosen, the rest of the world would certainly quickly vote to eliminate the American so-called middle Endian method. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.